It's been a while since I've written articles for talkiemag.com. In fact, it's been several years. But but I just got it into my head the other day for some reason to check on talkiemag.com just to see what they're up to these days. I know that Jim Goad is no longer writing for them, and but I thought they still probably published, Pat Buchanan and Ann Coulter stuff, and I wondered who else was still writing articles there. Well, anyway, I got to the page and I came across, I did indeed come across Ann Coulter, and I would encourage everyone out there, to read the last two articles that she wrote, which are about the Epstein case, the Epstein and Maxwell case. And the reason why I think that it's important that you read these articles is because I really don't see anybody else out there in the mainstream or close to the mainstream. I know maybe people don't think of Ann Coulter as mainstream person. I know she kind of got her start, being provocative, being incendiary, saying we should bomb their countries and convert them to Christianity and like that kind of rhetoric. And she's mostly known for fire breathing kind of rhetoric, scathing rhetoric that is very partisan. But I remember when the stuff with Epstein broke a few years ago, like when I was first hearing about Jeffrey Epstein, that I remember Coulter was interviewed. I think it was maybe by Sean Hannity or something, and I remember Sean Hannity trying to say this was a Democrat thing, or trying to make it more of have more of a partisan focus, and Coulter said, no, this is the elites of both parties circling the wagons around this guy who has all this power and all of this influence, and who just got a slap on the wrist for molesting and prostituting underage girls. And that really stood out to me at the time. And I remember commenting on it. Again, this was maybe 2014 or so. And what stood out to me about it was that it wasn't the normal like partisan kind of rhetoric. This was something that it seemed really that Coulter was really upset and angry about, in a way that made her just sort of eschew the the partisan kind of framing of things, which is something that she generally had been doing up to that point, and probably still does now. I haven't read her in a long time. I think she's a very talented writer, by the way. I think she's somebody who is a very clever person, and a good writer. Just much better than average as far as putting words together. She and Jim Goad are very similar. Remind me of each other in a lot of ways. Goad will probably be angry to hear me say that, but there's a real similarity there as far as just there being a lot of talent and a lot of vitriol, and it's fun to read to a certain extent, to a certain degree, but at a certain point, you sort of think to yourself, it's not really good for me to just be imbibing all this vitriol and all this bile all the time. I better mix in something that's not more moderate, but that just doesn't fixate so much on things that piss them off, things that piss you off. It's not a good idea to stay in a state of pissed offness, just generally speaking. And that's think of that as a word of counsel from your uncle here, your caring uncle on the internet. I just don't. You can understand what's seductive about it, about vitriol and bile and being pissed off and coming up with really good body slam insults for the people who are making you pissed off, who are doing these kinds of things that piss you off. But on the other hand, it's not good for your mental state to stay there. And so anyway, this is sort of functioning as a weird transition for talking about Coulter's latest two pieces, the last two articles that she has written, which are both about the Jeffrey Epstein cover-up. And what I find intriguing about these articles is she's returned back to the way that she came across in that interview with Hannity a few years ago, where she was not making this a partisan thing, but saying, what the hell is going on here? What is with these the people who are in charge of the media and who are in charge of the political process and the fact that they seem so incurious about this case in which so many of their own are implicated, and because it exposes their corruption and their perversity to such a degree, they therefore don't want to go into it. They want to gloss over it and leave it behind, and instead talk about other things that aren't nearly that are stupid to talk about, frankly, or to spend too much time talking about, like January 6th. And so I really see her functioning as a voice of conscience, on a certain level that is still closer to being mainstream. I mean, I know she's past her prime. I know her glory days were probably in the aughts or in the 90s even, during the Clinton years. But I'm very impressed by the degree to which we are hearing a voice of conscience in this case, and we're hearing somebody speaking in a way that somebody with a sharp mind and a scathing wit, looking at this catastrophe, this obvious evidence of again, I'll say it again, corruption and perversity at the highest of levels, and she's somebody who is at least looking at this and saying, this is bad, but not just saying this is bad, but drawing attention to all of the things that the establishment is doing to try to make it go away, to gloss over it. The joke that the media is, the big media particularly, and how they just don't seem to care. Any revelations that come out of this, they don't seem to want to. They don't seem to particularly inclined to want to talk about. Because why? Because they're bought off because they are compromised. This is something, of course, we've all known about before. But it's sort of like, anybody who knows about satire knows Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal. And I back when I was teaching literature, teaching like freshman and sophomore students, sophomore college students, literature, just in these larger classes, these survey classes, where you're not, you're the students you're teaching are not generally jazzed to be reading literature, or I mean, I shouldn't overgeneralize. Some of them enjoy it more than others, let's just say. But when I assigned something like A Modest Proposal, and clarified, because it was written in the 1600s, and so it's difficult to read. But when you clarify what the author is actually saying, there are a lot of people who just react like, "Oh my gosh, that's awful! That is why would he recommend something like that?" And you're like saying, "No, it's satire. It's because Jonathan Swift is so pissed off at the elites and their treatment of, in this case, the Irish, treating them in a way as if they were, cattle, as if they were brood mares, and only wanting to profit from them." And he took that argument, that whole, what he saw as this whole inhuman kind of perspective on the poor of Ireland, and the way they were regarded, the way they were being treated by the elites, and just took it all the way to absurd and grotesque levels of inhumanity and repulsiveness. You see in somebody like that, in the mind of somebody like Jonathan Swift, you see this, the most outraged of, again, it's a voice of conscience speaking, and it only occurs to him to write these kinds of things, to write these kinds of scenarios, like the one that he formulates in A Modest Proposal, which I won't go into here, but you can find out about it by reading it, and I do recommend it. It's a great piece of writing, a classic. I guess what I'm saying is, I think that if Ann Coulter could, reach deep down, she could become the Jonathan Swift of our own times on this Epstein thing. Just because the way that the way that she writes about it in these two articles, of which I hope there are many more. In fact, I find myself hoping that she writes a book on Epstein. And if there's any chance, there's no chance that Anne is watching this, but if somehow this video gets passed along to Miss Coulter herself, please write a book about the Epstein case. Write a book about Epstein and Maxwell and what they represent, and how the elites, the people who are in charge of the media and the political process, and the levers of power, how deeply morally compromised they are, what repulsive creatures they are, what they are capable of doing, and why this story, which should be huge, is just not being talked about. They're trying to kick it under the carpet, just like they did the Franklin scandal, which was just as repulsive and just as awful. They had more success with the Franklin scandal, kicking it under the carpet because that was before the internet, which is ironic since the internet is mostly an instrument of rule, an instrument by which the grid is tightened and it becomes harder to escape the grid. But on the other hand, it works both ways because it also enables people out there to expose certain things and makes it harder to make them go away, to just crowd them out and shut them up, and really cancel them. It's harder in an internet age to cancel people, interestingly, because there's always somewhere else they can go, even if they're taken off of the mainstream venues. So anyhow, I do hope that Ann Coulter writes more about the Epstein case, and I do recommend reading what she has written about it, because we see in these writings something that goes beyond her typical stuff, which is just vitriol, and very, very partisan vitriol, even when it's well written, even when it's accurate. This is something that I think is much more important and transcends partisanship, because everybody is implicated in this. Both wings of the mainstream politics, the political, both wings of the political bird are implicated in Epstein and Maxwell and all of their crimes. That's it. Thanks for watching. My name's Andy Nowicki. Check out my work at altrightnovelist.com, and check out my latest book, The Insurrectionist, which can be found at terrorhousepress.com.